As the sun is setting earlier in the day, many people can fall into depression. Dr. Amy Lee, she is a nutritionist, and she's here to provide some tips on how we can get that motivation back by increasing our vitamin D. Dr. Lee, hello. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
First thing, can you share what seasonal affective disorder means to those who do not know?
In short, we usually call it SAD or SAD. Basically, it is the psychological effects of having less sun than usual, or how the lack of sun or decrease of sun causing mental status change like depression, anxiety for most folks.
Yeah, and can you share how much vitamin D people usually lose during this time of year because the sun is no longer out as much?
We oftentimes measure our blood work during our physical exam. And the normal levels, blood levels of vitamin D usually runs between anything over 40 nanograms per milliliters. And so when we see someone that oftentimes are in the teens, like 18 or 24, those are the early signs for us that it is time for us to replace it with supplementation or eating certain foods to help with that level.
Yeah, and what are the other effects? We already talked about SAD, but what are some of the other effects of having the lack of vitamin D, and what are some of the symptoms people can look out for?
Oftentimes people don't even realize it until they go in for that blood work. And a lot of times we see more of the relationship with mood changes, people just feeling a little bit more sad or just not having that motivation to get out of bed. These are very common things. But we also have seen that people with low vitamin D have more bone pain and joint pain. Some people would kind of blame that on other condition states, but in reality, it could very well be your vitamin D level.
Yeah, and how can we supplement that vitamin D? And also, is there ever a way to get back the amount of vitamin D that we lose that we normally would get from the sun?
Supplementation is easy. You can buy vitamin D supplementation over the counter, at your local drugstores and whatnot. Or if you are finding yourself having really issues with retaining, because some people do take it every single day and don't see a budge in their levels, then you can actually ask your primary care to prescribe a once a weekly dosing at a higher level, which then stays in your body a little bit more effectively. But it could also be given in an injection form as well.
Yeah, and speaking of eating vitamin D, how much more vitamin D type of food should we be eating to kind of gain that back?
I always recommend people to actually just go online and Google foods with higher levels of vitamin D and then hyper focus on those food groups. And oftentimes it could be, proteins and seafoods with, fat in it that holds on to vitamin D. And so then you can actually kind of come up with a menu of items that is actually helping with your replacement. Minimally, a recommended daily allowance of vitamin D ranges from 400 international units for kids, babies, to about 600 to 800 for adults.
Thank you so much for joining us. That was a lot of great information that you shared with us, so thank you again.
Thank you very much for having me.